to outline the years that you just gave me again, or not?
Yes, it will be natural. I was born to a Jewish Orthodox family of Liehadut, Hungary, May 1930, with twin sister Judith. Mother became a widow. We were less than 2 years old, the twins. Then we were 5 brothers altogether. Of the 5, 3 survived. My oldest brother, 2 brothers, younger brothers, died of illnesses before the war, so that when 1943-44 came about, we were only 3. Ima, a widow, and 3 children. As was customary in those years, every youngster, if he was good enough, by the age of 12, before Bar Mitzvah, was sent to a yeshiva. So that he was either, he either had to go to a yeshiva for study or work for his living, help father and so on. Accordingly, I found myself in a larger township south of Hungary, where a very important yeshiva was working away. There was about 800 Bachurim. The routine was that, in my case, grandpa, paternal grandfather, mother's grandfather, the maternal grandfather was also a Talmid Chacham, but due to familial circumstances, we found ourselves living under the wings of my father's father, Shmuel Pinchas. He hired a bed for me in one of the rooms in that yeshiva city, and I was tucked away to the satisfaction of parents, which was not unusual, in a rather difficult and tough schedule for children. First lecture, first shiur, 6 o'clock in the morning, winter, summer, even before 6, and so on. It was not easy. And it was only Gemara. High school, grade school, I've done 4 or 5 classes, that's it. Pesach 1944, that is March, before Pesach, March 1944, 19th of March to be precise, Germans overran Hungary for reasons that they were convinced that the Hungarian leadership wants to jump off the train. People already knew which way the Nazi regime is heading. And to forestall this, they put their hands on Germany altogether. And their first move, as usual in all these places, was to roll up the Jewish carpet, to use a paraphrase. And as I said, everyone who was on the train on that day, I was one of them, going home from Chofish, for Pesach, disappeared into a detention camp. Some days later, I was released due to my young age and got home in time to find myself in a ghetto, which also happened all over Hungary. And 3-4 more weeks later, mid-May, second half of May, we were kicked out of the ghetto too, just told to roll up our stuff. Even the entry into the ghetto was a disaster. The Hungarian leadership obviously cooperated. This couldn't have been done by the Germans alone. And the process was short and brutal. First step, major legislature in the Hungarian parliament to disfranchise the Hungarian Jewry. We stopped being Hungarian citizens. Next move, minor legislation, area stuff, to disallow ownership of houses, of shops, and so on. And the third move was remove personal freedom. It went tach, fantastic stuff. Looking back, it was obvious that the Germans had advanced, and along the route, complete cooperation and assistance from everybody in Hungary. So that in less than 3 months, 800,000 people were rolled up. Incredible, the process. I don't know how it happened in other countries. And all this, of course, as a grown-up, looking back at the period and having read some of the stuff that Hungarians issued after that. Bottom line, shortly after I returned, there was one of those commands pasted on the walls. By such and such a date, 5 o'clock in the morning, all the Jewish citizens of my township, which has an impossible long Hungarian name, on the Czechoslovakian border, will concentrate in 2 streets of the city. Hunyadi Street and Tököi Street. This is Hungarian.
What's the name of the city?
How tight? Balasagyarmat. Okay? Border place, border township, still exists. So we had experienced shock after shock after shock. My mother was thrown out of her shop. She had a hairstyle, how do you call it? Pianochrit. What's pianochrit in English?
Hairdresser.
Yeah, hairdresser, but pianochrit is a
Beautician.
no. What
Okay.
is,
Oh, wig.
fiction. And with all the others, they were thrown out of their businesses, and we could take 1 piece of luggage per person, leave your house, your home, your furniture, everything, and congregate in those 2 streets as directed. 3 weeks later, after Pesach, another order. Tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock, everybody out of the houses, both streets. We were marched to the train station, packed onto freight trains, and traveled about 4 miles out of the city, where the train disgorged all of us, and we were put up in 2, 3 very large agricultural buildings on straw on the floor. Waited there 2, 3 more days until the trains could be lined up. And another one of these 5 o'clock in the morning orders, we were ordered into freight trains, about between 50 and 65 persons in the train, 2 buckets. Everybody was encouraged to take water, and all our miserable luggages which we had. The sliding doors were locked, and that's it. The train did not move off until late in the afternoon, so we sat there in May for over 4 or 5 hours, and then we chugged out, and we traveled what was left of that day. The next night, all of the next day, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. Next night, and on the morning of the 3rd day, the train pulled into one of those ramps, stations. We have arrived at Birkenau. I would call this the first chapter. And I've touched it just in headline terms because I don't think you're interested in the reality of a wagon like this with 65 people, mostly Orthodox. Saba, who had this tefillin with him, of course, and the talit. It's time for mincha. But there's a toilet, the bucket. That's the toilet for men, and that's the toilet for women. Close your eyes if you can, and tell me how did people daven, and never mind daven, how did they pee, for heaven's sake? They did, for 3 days. Some wanted to commit suicide, others broke down and couldn't stop crying. It was a madhouse in all of these boxcars. A subject that apropos will disappear with us, because even now that I'm still here and comparatively normal trying to describe it, the listener, poor person, is unable to empathize with me. How can you? Nobody can.
Why?
Why? Because what I'm describing is out of the experience of a normal person. Have you ever been in a freight train?
No.
So how the heck am I going to tell you what a freight train is? Then, because my next question will have to be, oh, you visited the freight train, lovely, you're intelligent. Now place 55 people, the middle between 45 and 65. 55 persons, all ages, into the freight train. Now 2 buckets, toilet, Wash your face. Daven. You understand that there are depths of reminiscences, and I move aside all issues of sorrow, of hurt, because it doesn't help. I mean, this is not a get-together to make people cry. That's not why I came here from Tel Aviv. I found this over the years. This is one of those interim sessions now, that it's very hard to talk about Birkenau at the eye level, the Gova Ha'inai, because some of the stuff I'm going to dish out in our next chapter will be, most of it will hurt, and all of it will be truly outside your collecting ability. Didn't you meet this before?
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand it. It's something I'm trying to understand.
You're a brave person. Those girls, this is an in-between session. The girls there, I tried to tell them that, please be careful. I'm aware that I'm in a religious place, not just religious. Shomrei Emunei Israel, it is a Haredi school, but the descriptions I must touch. If I am to give you a proper description, I will have to say things that don't belong to your school. And I'm doing them because that's why I came for. I'm not a literature teacher. I am your tour guide, by God. And I'm going to tell you what there was. And I've never used, and I'm not going to use here either, anything that it is not, which is not first-hand. Bedidi have uvde, your husband say now. That's Aramaic for it happened with me. Bedidi, with me, have uvde was the case. I will never use second-hand stuff because it's not appropriate. I'm not talking about for another person. I'll give you one input which comes from my sister, or rather it refuses to come from my sister. You'll see the problem, the problematica there. Next chapter. Is this all right, what we are doing?
Did you know where you were going in the train?
Only normal can ask a question like this. Maybe the leadership knew, I can certainly know, and in the immediate circles. Post factum, we have a hunch that the majority of the Hungarians didn't know what's going to happen, let alone the Jews. Hence my burning anger at the leadership. Bunch of assholes. They didn't know. And it was their goddamn duty to find out. They had 20 years to do this. I count from mid-March 1933, where the little painter stepped into the Reichstag as the Chancellor of the Reich, Adolf, my friend. That was the elections in March 1933. March 33, March 43. One whole decade. Where was the Jewish leadership of Europe? Screw after screw was tightened on this press. Where were they? לא ידענו, לא ראינו, לא שמענו, לא אמרו לנו, לא נכון, לא נכון, לא מאמין, כן מאמין. Bunch of idiots. Blind, חרשים, אילמים, עיוורים, פחדנים, עלובי נפש. Write this down. Blind, stupid, yellow-bellied bastards. And most of this I blame on the religious leadership for a simple sociological reason. They had quite literally unlimited control over their flock. The secular leadership were lawyers, finance people, half religious, half Chvesos. They had less of an impression. Their word was not rule. Unsere Rebbe, Reb Chaim David, bless his Talmudic soul, what whatever he said was the law. Families didn't start children without asking the Rebbe. They didn't go to the hospital without going first to the Rebbe. Where was my Rebbe for 10 years? And the answer is blowing in the wind. How does that song go? I cannot find one person. And if he is an academician, he will mumble apologetica. Professor Bauer did that. You don't understand. The circumstances, there was no communication, the Jewish leadership was not organized. I have a list of excuses as long as my arm. I refuse to listen to even one of them. Professor Wichmann is a young one. He's also involved. One of the teachers in Bar-Ilan, in the history of the Shoah. He part of the way he agrees, he wrote an article about this, the Jewish side of the Holocaust. Because everybody discusses the Goyish side. What about us? And how many uprisings were there? 4, 5? Out of the 6, 10, we might guess. Out of the 10, 9, nobody heard of them. There was one in Kovna, and there was one here and one there. We know only about one, which is the fig leaf of post-war Jewry. And I have asked a simple question, Kinderlach. It has 2 parts. What was the name of the chief rabbi of the Kile of Warsaw, the Orthodox chief rabbi? Which side do you want to pull? Right, left side or right side? Ask your husband. Who was the chief rabbi of the Warsaw Jewish community? Of course, because he was a Gurnisht. But asking what was the name of the girl who took part in the ghetto uprising, sure. Lubetkin, Anilevich, people of 4 or 5, apropos, secular youth. Not one yeshiva bucher in any of the uprisings. Not because they didn't want to or they couldn't. They were not told to go. You know what a Din Torah is? Court case, a rabbinical court case. Where's your husband? He has to listen to this. If there is a place wherever the hell we go from here, and if there are not already 1,000 court cases, I'll start one. I'll demand the whole leadership. I want them in the box. I even have a lawyer who will support me. Next chapter.
Does he know? Does she know?
Yes. Remember, my grandfather will support me. Had they had the opportunity to return, there were only 2 major figures in the Jewish rabbinical leadership of the period who did make a move. It was wholly negative, but they made it. Who do I refer to?
No?
He ran away on the Castro train. I spit on him. That's not the thing I wanted to tell. There are 2 others. The Belzer Rebbe, brothers Rokach. The Heilige Belzer Rebbe and his brother Aaron. They were spirited away on Jewish public money and died between clean sheets in Eretz Yisrael. The Belzer Jewish community was burned. I don't know how many were left. And I would tell these people today there is a large, noisy, rich Belzer Besemedrash in Budapest, in Tel Aviv. They have educational institutions and so on. I would tell them, Morai V'Rabotai, for the next 500 years, the name Belz should be mentioned only at night and with eyes cast down. Nobody. Have you ever heard of the case of the 2 Rokach brothers? No one has. Your husband doesn't know a thing about this. I bet you $100. Never heard of it. Which is in itself a disgrace. I don't understand. I don't understand. And I don't like them after the war either. They are not leaders. They are pkidei dat. And the average Rav even his knowledge is about a micron and a half thick, or 2.5 microns. The richtige Talmidei Chachamim are not visible. You don't know them, you don't hear them. I meet them at my shiurei erev in Bnei Barak. I go there twice, 3 times a week. I have a brilliant Magid Shiur. One of the editors of Yated Ne'eman, Yitzchok, wrote, first-class teacher. And I sit there at least twice a week, if I can, 3 times a week, just not to lose that's the place where I get this practice, which I need so much. In other words, Torah Shebal Peh, it's another harsh thing to say. Torah Shebal Peh does not need the Rabbanim to shine, respectfully. Rabbanim Yekarim, wherever you are. You have failed. Certainly in my generation. Each and every one of them an utter, complete failure. Write that down, Geveret. And this is not a goy dover Ivrit talking here. This is someone who is in love with Torah Shebal Peh and consider this the most brilliant edifice belonging to us. And God forbid that the Talmidei Chachamim should disappear. That would be terrible. But the Rabbanim should, even them, I don't want them to disappear. I want them to reshape. They don't. They refuse to reshape. They don't take leading positions to this day, except in rolling their eyes. You can sense the fixation here. And I'm 70 years old. I have a right to be meshuggah about at least one thing. Here it is. Next sentence. Next paragraph. Are you ready for this? What I'm dishing out here?
I'm ready. I'll put my coffee.
Am I hurting you?
No.
Birkenau.
Is it worrying you, the noise? You're not hearing it?
Birkenau. We have left off with the sliding doors of the train, cattle train, open, and we are faced with a bunch of pyjama-clad people speaking the coarse gutter Yiddish of Poland, ordering us in harsh terms to get the hell out of the boxes, pronto, don't touch the luggage, leave it there, it'll follow you. Get out and line up in rows of 10. And our Kehillah by then was devoid of men, since one of the orders, still in the ghetto, looking back into our first chapter, said, starting on next Wednesday at 5 o'clock in the morning, all male members of the Jewish community from age 16 to 55 to present themselves at the train station. They were all taken away into forced labor, into various fronts, Russian front, Italian front. By that time the invasion was planned or already took part. So that the Kehillah was essentially children, old people, male, female, and women. The basic structure of the Kehillah, we were about 2,700, between 2,800 and 3,500 souls, 450 families. As I said, the male members were already away. So that we lined up as ordered. Saba held my hand, and Ima held Judith's hand. My brother was already away in this labor camp. He was 3 years older than us. We were 13 and a half. He was just within the line, ordered to report for work. Suddenly and I have to add here that the second language of Hungarian Jewry, certainly of the better educated parts, was German, just like English today. We belong to the Austro-Hungarian cultural framework not many years, Hungary actually belonged politically and certainly culturally. So German was a second language. Mother had German well, and we learned German by fourth grade. Second language started. We learned the Gothic alphabet in school. Anyway, someone shouts from the head of the column. There was 2-3 German officers with 2-3 soldiers, and this whole long line of people was surrounded, not very thickly, but surrounded with soldiers, with armed soldiers and dogs, as opposed to watch over us. At the time, we didn't understand what this means. And a voice shouted from the top of the column in German, Zwillinge raus, twins to step out. Before that, we heard the similar order, Ärzte raus, doctors to step out. This was the way that the leadership of Birkenau collected the experts they needed in various fields of maintaining the camp. All this we learned, of course, later on. Mothers called to Saba, Saba, give me the boy. That was me. So mother held on to us and we stepped out. And we were told to stand aside, and in front of our eyes, our little kahila disappeared in the next 35 minutes. On the top of the column, one of the officers, a well-dressed and very neat person, had his hands here in his coat and directed the traffic left or right with his finger. At the time, no need to say we didn't know what all this was about. And the column disappeared, and there was I with Ima and Judith and Nu. So one of the pajama boys came up to us and said to Mother and Judith, you go that way. Frauen, you go that way. And you, Yattel, that's youth, come with me in Yiddish. And I was taken about from here. This is the officer standing through this passage, which is about this wide. We actually went through this place with my 2 sons later, and I was deposited here at the entrance to this camp. Notice that each one of these camps is not a small thing. This is about 500 meters long, rectangular, 500 meters by 150 meters. I thought it was bigger, but one of the twins is a helicopter pilot, Udi, of the Air Force. And he said, Abba, you're wrong. I know what I'm talking about. I am trained at assessing distances and sizes. This is not more than 500 meters and 150 meters. And I recorded it as such. And I was told to stand here and wait. And then the door came, and some asked, this is the guard room of the camp. Each camp had a guard room. And I was then entered into this camp, and they took me to one of the rooms. A large hall. There were several rooms doing things. There was a barber. Here, this is the administrative center of the camp. This is our camp. Entrance, guard room, administrative center. We will come back to this center later on. I was sheared, head, the rest of the body, ordered to pick out a trouser and a pair of shoes and so on from a corner there, because we were told to undress. And that's another shock which met us. Nudity. I mean, the average person is shy, and it's unheard of to undress in crowd. But already at the train trip, we met this problem. And after a while I was inside the camp, nudity was a part of our life, and I am branded in this way too. I have an entirely different approach to nudity than the average person does. And that is etched into everyone, male or female. I am different. I was given this smart team, which they wear. All clothes, no underwear. And I was told to go into another room, and there a fellow grabbed my arm and with a what looked like a pen, dotted these numbers into my arm, which was to be. He told me, das ist dein Nummer, in Yiddish. From now on, this is your name. A14 096. A14096. In any language but in German, I must think about this, yeah, including my mother tongue, Hungarian, not in German. If I was woken up 4 o'clock in the morning, your number, A14 096, automatically. It was burned into me. Then, that I was fitted out properly as a proper Birkenau inmate, I was told to go into this block, second, I must say, I don't remember whether it was the second or the third, this side from the entrance. I think it was the second. Sometimes I'm not sure whether it was this block or that block, which later on, next 2 days, I found out that this is the famous twin block. Block is a hut. And I entered my hut. Here it is. The inner structure is described here. I found myself in an ugly, terribly smelling place, which was another shock for me. Everything in Birkenau smelled. It was a combination of urine, excreta, cleaning material, harsh, smelly cleaning stuff, and decaying bodies. An unforgettable smell. I found myself in a longish block, both sides, with three-tiered, very tall bunks, and in the middle, a horizontal stone, what turned out to be a heating body, heating element. On each end of it, there was a coal stove, which when heated up, there was a chimney here, a chimney there, and this thing was about this high, something like this, and it was the heating element of the block. And on it were laid out people in various stages of dying or dead. All again, this place. Do you know about Dante? 17th century Italian writer. His very famous work, The Inferno of Dante, which served for many years as the religious Catholic non plus ultra about the Gehenna. Dante's Inferno, Gvirti, was a Gan Chova experiment in literature compared to the inside of a block in Birkenau. I step in, and there was the Capo. Capo is the short word for Kameradenpolizei, the police of the group, not outside police, our own police, either police. The block Ältester, that's another German, the elder of the block, or the block Capo. He had a room, he slept here, there was a toilet on this side, and the other room was the Machsan on the other side, another toilet, and I had to present myself in front of him. He said, no, titchafef, get on with it, get into your block and leave me alone. And I get here, not the first one, the second three-tiered bunk. There's about 7 or 8 of them each side, which means that on each platform there were anywhere between 5 and 8 bodies, so that each three-tiered thing was between 16 and 26, 28 people, divided on 3 blocks, and it was always a function of the last selection, because the physical conditions were such that the demise of the average person was not very long. And there were always, every morning, there were people who were either completely dead or just about there, walking skeletons and so on. This was something I had to get used to. Then, as I walked down hesitantly, I didn't This is a 14-year-old boy who is bombarded for the last 4 weeks. It's shock after shock after shock after shock. And how much can a normal person collect of all this? Okay, so I am accosted by a child. He looked like a 4 or 5-year-old boy with glasses. In Hungarian, boy, no, come here, child. Who are you? And we had a short discussion. My name is so-and-so. I come from here. And he says, hey, we are family. I said, is that so? Then I find out that I'm not talking to a child, I'm talking to a grown-up. He was a dwarf. And as you probably know, there are 2 kinds of dwarfs. There is the Toulouse-Lautrec dwarfs, I call them, Mongoloid bodies, actually grown-up people with distorted bodies. And there are dwarfs whose pituitary gland didn't work properly. I'm told that today intervention is possible and dwarfs don't have to occur again. But Lajos Bácsi was a dwarf. He comes from a Feld family, Alexander Feld. He had an older brother. He was the only non-normal child, another Orthodox Hungarian family. And his brother Yitzhak married Auntie Esther. Maternal grandfather was widowed twice. First grandmother, Bluma, had 3 children. Ima, Uncle David, and Uncle Yecheskel. Grandmother too, this is the Yugoslav family, yes, the Freilichs, had 6 more children. Most of whom ran away to England, and they lived there until old age. But one of the 3 sisters was Auntie Esther. And Auntie Esther married Yitzhak Feld. So Lajos Bácsi, my dwarf, said, hey, we are family. From then on, we were symbiotic partners. Lajos Bácsi slept on the bottom rung, of course. He couldn't climb. He found it hard to climb onto this one, let alone to the other one. Because there was always a keresh, sort of a guard here, so the people didn't fall off. And we slept, I was on the outside, Lajos Bácsi on the inside, which meant that we had 2 covers, 2 smichot. And we slept like a pair of kapot, how do you call it? A pair of spoons. Lajos Bácsi on my inside, being warmed by my body, and I had in exchange the second smicha on my back. And there was more to this. I was the one who collected the morning issue of Drink, and especially the midday issue, I wasn't there, as I'll tell you in a moment. And the evening issue was the most important because that was the daily portion of bread. Bread was a rectangle about the size of a leveina. What's a leveina? You build a brick, but larger than a brick, and it was cut at the length and at the width. 4 portions to 1 brick. No need to say that the Blockhältester, the block capo, stole a slice from each, both from the long axis and from the short axis. So we all got 1/4 of a block, which meant life or death. And Lajos Bácsi was too small, he was trampled. So I collected the evening ration for both of us. 2 days later, and even before the 2 days later, now remember that Lajos Bácsi introduced me to the crematoria. He advised me what happened to our kehile, showed me the flames, showed me the meaning of the camp. Our camp was neighbors to Canada. We called it Canada, just like we called Mexico, which was a reserve assembly in the middle of construction. Canada was all the belongings of the people were by these pajamaed helpers were brought into Canada. This is where they were industrially divided and shipped off to Germany. Very valuable stuff. Most of them also included, of course, currency, gold, whatever people spirited out, wherever we may need it. So there was a special group of people who looked for this stuff and kept them, and whoever was found touching anything was killed on the spot. And these were also the people, they are called the Sonderkommando, the special group, who handled the bodies afterwards into the in and out of the oven, and there was an important process there too. There were groups, subgroups of these people who had to pull the gold tooth from the cadavers, and there were tons, many tons of gold collected there. Again, whoever was found with gold in him, on him, whether he hid it in his rectum or his mouth, didn't help. He was killed on the spot. This was the Sonderkommando. Since they knew exactly what's happening, they were killed off on an average every 3 months. Some of them survive. I've met, not personally because he refused to show himself, but we heard him talk in Yad Vashem years ago when the question of Mengele's life or death was discussed. Another element which Lawyer Bachi advised me about was that already in our transport there were wheelchair cases, very old people who couldn't walk, very young mothers with babies in their arms. And at the selection, they wanted the mother among those who left alive for some more work, but not the baby. So someone said, give me the baby. I said, then the officers noted, okay, let her wait. They placed the people who couldn't walk for any reason and babies onto trucks and drove them to this corner. There was a very large farmhouse here. Behind the farmhouse there was a great big pit with a huge roaring fire day and night, into which fire they threw this bunch of people. For second half of July, all of August and the first 10 days of September, that was the peak of Hungarian Jewry disposal. And work was, the bodies were so much, there were 2-3 trains arriving a day, each with 2,000, 3,000 souls. How do you do away with 10,000 people in a day? So it went around the clock, and the overflow of old and so on was simply carted into this area and thrown into the fire alive. I heard, not we, I heard from my workplace, to which I'll come in a minute, for the better part of those 6 or 8 or 9 weeks, the screams of these people, they were clearly, you could clearly hear them at night, because it was comparatively quieter, and during the day. Okay. 2-3 days after our arrival, we are called, the block couple, because every morning at 5 o'clock we had to all line up for a counting process. It was called in German Appell. And only the dead didn't step down for Appell. About a few minutes before 5. Aufstehen, Bett machen, yeah? Get up, roll call. Only the dying and the dead didn't step up. Whoever didn't bugger off out of his bed into the roll call was beaten harshly. Now, as we stand there and count and so on, and then someone was sent into the block behind us to find who is dying, who is already dead, and about an hour later, there was a small team of people, they were also changed every few weeks, who came with a small platform with bicycle-type wheels, 2 hands on each side, and dragged out the bodies, alive or almost alive or completely dead, threw them onto this cart, and carted them away to this block, this one. At the other end of this was called the Leichenhalle, the hall of bodies. The Leichenhalle had a very large stone table here on the outside. There was a tower here, the electric wire and so on, where doctors, pathologists and so on always worked on bodies or cutting open crania or whatever. This is part of the medical work that was done. So I was called out of the line that morning. Another boy by the name of Lipa, I'm looking for him for 56 years, I couldn't find him yet. they ordered us to the camp gate. Present yourself at the camp gate, says the couple, here. So we present ourselves here, and an SS soldier arrived. Son of a bitch, I'll never forget him either. And we find ourselves the Batman of the guard room, Lipa and myself. Our job, spongia, wooden floor, every morning, clean and really clean. The Stiefelach, the, what do you call the boots, the leather straps, the sidearm holders and so on, fetch the lunch, fire the coal ovens, and do anything that is required. Run errands in and out of the camps. There were 6 non-coms running our camp. There was a French window outside each guard room, before which everyone had to line up and present himself. This is the guard room. Entrance gate, French window, duty soldiers, 2 or 3, coat hanger, coal fire. Door, door, window, window. A typical room held 2 non-coms, bed, coal fire, little table, aron. This is a mahsan. Corridor, wooden floor. Job number 1, spongia. Stuff is all here, like in any mahsan. Job number 2, coal fire. 1, 2, 3, 4, whichever there were not. Sometimes the room was empty, but mostly it was 1, 2, 3, 4 coal fires. Clean up everything. Then lunchtime, we had to fetch with a bicycle the lunch of the people. That's another thing you guys don't know. There were these assemblable metal containers. There was a handle with a bottom, and the ears of your vessel, you could slide through the handle and place 2 or 3, one above the other, then hold it. 2 of them parked on each side of the bicycle. Underneath was always marak in case it spills, then tabkhi adama, whatever lunch was. And this was one of our jobs. No one was allowed to hurt a guinea pig of Mengele. Dr. Mengele was the medical person in charge in Birkenau. And to us, in Birkenau, Mengele was not the deputy of God. God was the deputy of Mengele in Birkenau. And make no mistake about this. Birkenau was the place where the German command, typical for them, he was the medical person in charge. Full stop. And he didn't, I don't think he maimed or killed for pleasure. I don't know, I'm unable to say this. But he certainly dissected people if he saw it necessary. I will touch on this in a few minutes when we get to the tweets. Anyway, we found ourselves the cleaning children of this thing, and we were beaten steady and often. Not seriously, but among the soldiers, there were 6 of them. 3, 4 never bothered us. All we had to do, we had to make sure that we do very precisely what is needed, like cleaning the shoes. In a normal shoe, not like in these modern ones, there is a deeper section here. Now this bit had to shine exactly like this one. And I'm not talking about here or there, God help you. And if the job was not clean enough, then Fritz was his name. Staff Sergeant Fritz. Oberscharführer, that's Scharführer is a sergeant. Oberscharführer Fritz, he was 6'4" or 6", I remember him, with a pair of hands. Each hand was a coal shower size thing. Blonde, piggy eyes, speaking a distorted Schwabian German. He used to grab me by the ear, pick me up, at the edge of my feet. He says, Das sollte sauber sein. You call this clean. Call shower left or right. Whoa, whoa. Turn me around with his 2 or 3 heavy kicks. Los, wieder machen. Quickly start again. So we were beaten steadily. He was the nastiest one. He did it for pleasure, Fritz. Sergeant Miller was the next one. He wore a Moshe Dayan patch on his right ear. He was hurt in the Russian front, a broken person. He was very dangerous. He spoke very rarely, and it was dangerous to anger him. He couldn't stop hitting us. It happened several times, both with me and with Lipa. We were rescued by the person in charge of the team, Hauptscharführer, Raf Samal, who was a German, an original German. He was in charge. He knew that you must not hurt a Mengele twin because you have to answer to Mengele. They were afraid of Mengele too. This was our daily life. Now, having had this job, we found ourselves, and in retrospect, fairly well acquainted with the geography of Birkenau. Other people knew nothing of Birkenau. The main camp, this is the famous major camp for men, there were anywhere between 140 and 250,000 people in this one. It is twice the size of any of these. This is the place where the famous orchestra played. Every morning, between 20 and 40,000 people marched out from here to work somewhere. In the evening, they came back. So the district was huge, and there was an interconnection between the guard rooms, and we were the messenger boys. The average inmate has never seen any of this. He was not allowed to move around. Those that went to work, the march was between in the width of 6 to 10, so they were all walking for their lives. They were in bad condition. All they could remember is the gate and the march to the workplace and back in the evening. We were the ones who gallivanted around, 2 young boys. So we had the knowledge, comparative knowledge of the area. And of course, whatever happened at the gate. So that wherever there was a selection is a controlling process which adjusted the input of new comparatively healthy bodies and the upfall, the outflow of dead or almost dead. How was this done? Via a selection. Every now and then, twice, 3 times a month, the command came down, selection. Because the Lagerkapo, the chief administrator, the inside administrators, had to say, what's happening, how many people, we have a new transport from somewhere, I'm assuming all this, I didn't know it by heart. And he said, I'm sorry, there's no more space. Okay, selection. So the next morning, there was a German officer, again, walking along, and we were all lined up. Everybody knew what a selection is. Out, 20, they knew how many bodies are to be culled, and they were segregated, and they knew very well what this means. And the 2 boys, Lipa and myself, same afternoon or the same evening, a truck would back up to the gate. This bunch was dragged out, crying, some had to be dragged out, some collapsed, whatever, thrown onto the lorry and driven to Canada, to the crematorium. And we watched this for 7, 8, 9 months, and it leaves a burning mark, one of the many burning marks. The helplessness, the inevitability, and not the religious question. No, slicha, Kadosh Baruch Hu, will someone please budge? We were beyond that. We helplessly watched what's going on. Two 14-year-old boys. You don't have to be a PhD in clinical psychology to assume what a thing like this does to a 14-year-old normal boy. And this was only one of them. Situation inside the camp was also infernal. inside our camp, there is this area which is, I call it Sherutim. This is a huge latrine. They dug a huge hole, because there were thousands of people here, placed concrete plates with a male-sized hole, for men, women, at equidistances, and that was the public toilet. This place was not just bad smelling, there were gases from it coming up, and many people committed suicide by throwing themselves in. Some fell in. This place too, this is why I said, Dante was a boy chick, penning silly exercises as compared to the reality of Birkenau. I'll tell you something else. Where is your husband? He should hear this. There are 2 tochechot in the 5 books of Uncle Moses. You know what a tochecha is? Parshat Bechukotai, Sefer Vayikra. We will read this parsha in the next, we are now, next week is Metzorah. In the next, the 5th Shabbat from now is Parshat Bechukotai, the last parasha in Sefer Vayikra. There's a chapter there. It starts with what I will do to you when you keep my mitzvot, and what I will do to you when you don't keep the mitzvot. It's called Tochecha. And it is a harsh, brutal description of the things that will happen to us. It has another parallel in Sefer Dvarim, which is the Mishneh Torah. There it is at the end, but not completely, and then in Parshat Kitavot. First one is called Tochecha Gdola, Bechukotai, which you'll read in a few weeks. Second one is Tochecha Ktana, in Parshat Kitavot. Look up those 2 chapters. I say today that what happened to us in and around Birkenau is pretty well described in both Tochechot. But I at the time I didn't, it's not for nothing that I have this tremendous respect for Torah Sheba'al Peh. It is a storehouse of genuine quality. And I can even understand how some of my brethren could retain their emunah. One of them, who was my tutor before I went to the yeshiva, is one of the head figures of Matzat Gdolei Torah. His name is Rabbi Mierla, who Razmet knows him, Yochanan Sofer. He's my tutor. We are on first name basis to this day. He knows me by my diminutive. And I call him by his first name, Yochanan, not Yochanan, Yochanan. We are friends to this day. My grandfather hired him to chase after me that I don't run away from the Beit HaMidrash. Before I was old enough to be sent to the yeshiva. And he would chase me. I would run away and we to play soccer, whatever. I have to go back to study this year. No. So that the circumstances inside the camp were terrible. And I didn't touch on comparatively simple matter like lice. How many kinds of lice do you know, Geveret? Please be advised, there are 2 or 3 kinds. One which would be in your delicate parts, male, female. One set in your head. A third type in your clothing. Here. This is a shikun kinim. Bedbugs. Trillions of them. Together with the smell. You are describing a situation here which is it's a hopeless task to describe this to a normal person, let alone ask him, her, to really grasp any of this, except allowing it in and out quickly. I don't understand what you guys are talking about in the first place. This was Birkenau, not all of it. I would like to stop here for a second. Having described our job, I would like to touch on a few more time-based occurrences which will take us to the Shabbat in Parashat Bo, I maintain 20th of January 1945, Kav Beshvat, when I met the first Russian soldier. Yad Vashem maintains that it's on the 27th of January. I maintain that they are wrong. The Western world decided the 27th of January is the Yom HaShichrur of Birkenau. They are wrong. The first Russian soldier accosted us 7 days ahead of its time. It's possible that formally they decided on 27th. Professor Gutmann advised me that I am wrong. Lo nachon. He is wrong. Stop here.
Stop. You don't need the Yom HaShoah?
No. What for? I don't have to close my eyes to remember Fritz Fritz and his pause, or to remember the despondency, both myself and Lipa watching the average Ablieferung, that's German for delivery of the selected bodies, males, female, male, Muslim, our campus mate. In the next section I will describe how Mother and Judith became our neighbors. The women hospital camp was transferred from the other side of the Chet. These are the Frauenlager. One day in August, 3rd of August, someone decided to do away with the gypsies. So one night the gypsy camp was empty. They knew what the school was. There was another inferno, what the noises were. Another thing I don't have to close my eyes to remember. Next morning the camp was empty. Then, end of the same day, it got filled up with women. Logic. We make both hospital camps side by side. Then I find out that Mother and Judith are my neighbors. This will be the next section. The spoken and the written word are inadequate instruments for Birkenau. That's my problem with the first world-class bestseller of the 21st century. I don't know how to put this down on paper. I'd like to. And I have a file, and it's sort of crachting away, but I don't know. Everybody tells me, Baraon, you have to write, you have to write, you have to write. Just say, how do I turn on the inner light? Geweret. Advise me. I say to him, do you have a machshev here? Close the doors, shut the lights, sit down in front of the screen. No, write. How's that done? You won't tell me that I can write prose with the average yankel in. Relatively healthy, body and soul. My bone structure is starting to acting up, but I'm at the age where it should have a bad knee, this, that. Inside, psychologically, I'm comparatively normal. And the most important thing, I'm ready to talk. The average Katzetnik doesn't want to talk. Cannot, will not, combination thereof. I'll explain my sister's problem in this area. Judith refuses to talk. To this day. She didn't talk to her husband, she didn't talk to her children, she didn't talk to her grandchildren, she doesn't talk to me. I mention this because she constitutes the opposite of her twin brother. I am ready to talk, and I can express myself, because among our brethren there are some who can talk and will talk, but they cannot express themselves in any language. The communicative skills are not given to everyone, both verbal and scriptural. So the Yotzei Abachanot are a minority in any case. And of the minority, there is another minority who is ready to talk. And of that minority, only a small minority can talk, let alone write. So there's a disadvantage here, an important one. This is why Yad Vashem is spending so much money and effort to drag everything out from everyone as far as they can.
always spoken?
סליחה?
Have you always talked?
Yes. Yes. I believe yes, I have. Why? I don't know. I have served, you're not the first PhD candidate to talk to me about this. There was one lady, Dr. Hannah Kaminer, psychology, clinical psychology. She researched for her PhD work the post-traumatic effect as it shows itself in a group of Birkenau graduates vis-a-vis a group of control group of normals in the specific area of dreams. Post-traumatic shocks as they present themselves in dreams. And of the group, of the small group that she checked, we slept in the Technion laboratory all wired up and so on to check the REM sleep and the this sleep and that sleep. And of the small group, not so small, we were about 18, 16 ex-camp graduates, the majority suffered from bad dreams all their lives. It influenced their married life, their well-being and so on. And there was a minority in which I found myself the single minority, people who don't dream. I don't dream. I asked Hannah, Dr. Kaminer, how did this happen? She says, we have no idea. This is some inner mechanism which keeps the lid of the pressure cooker firmly closed. I never dream. The machines showed that I do dream. But when they woke me up and said, tell us what you have dreamt. So, this is what happened, the actual research work in the Technion. And then, so it was also, Hannah is now a respected person in Haifa, in the area, and we are good friends. And I asked her, Hannah, how does this mechanism work? He says, Kalman Baron, the day I prove how this thing works, I'll get the Nobel Prize. We have no idea how a person can close the lid of the pressure cooker. I do. She called it survival instinct. I don't know. They don't really know. Psychologists don't know. Anyway, back to quickly to finish this chapter because it's a
So
longest
you've never
one.
had a recollection of a dream?
I don't wake up sweating because Mengele holds a selection, let alone the checks. This is the other section which I want to talk to you about. Every 10 days or so, according to some list which you of course didn't know, each twin was called for an Untersuchung. Untersuchung is medical inspection in German. We had to show at the Lagerkapos block, the administrative building of the camp, there was a large marpea in here. This is a biggish building. And there was a stone table there. And the tables, the medical team consisted of Professor Oppenheimer. He was a child doctor, child specialist, who turns out, this I learned after the war, he was part of the medical committee who accorded Mengele his MD. So he was dragged out, Ernst Raus, remember? And he was head of the research projects. Twins, dwarfs, and the previous one before us, remnants of which we have met in our camp, industrialized sterilization experiments. It was the lack of the Greek youth, Saloniki Jewish community, from which the male members were collected and sterilized in a variety of methods by surgical intervention, chemical intervention, X-rays. It didn't work, they failed. And we are told that there was a similar experiment on the female side. These three medical experiments were managed by Professor Oppenheimer. He had a young Polish doctor, a blonde girl, helping him, and there were always 2 or 3 orderlies to tell the guinea pigs what to do. So I had to show up, and the standard word, Austin, Andres, and it was natural by then. It's natural to this day. I don't give a toppenny hoot whether I am closed or unclosed. And nudity is mostly sad and decaying. The shadow behind every nude, male, female, beautiful, young, take your pick. There is a sad, grey curtain just behind her, in her. That was burned into me, and I'm other than impressed by nudity. Je ne care pas, you say in Latin. And we had to, our scene on the table. Sometimes they said walk, there was wooden steps, 10 times up and down. The majority of the checks were very similar to what I had in flying school later on at the Air Force. That's our next chapter. Then I was ordered to lie on my stomach or on my back. On my back, I was not so bad. Well, the terror was less difficult, but on my stomach, I never knew what's coming. It was either a stethoscope, cold, or an injection of some sort. Again, this is only what I know about myself. Judith will not tell me what was done to her. There were interventions, surgical, at least 2 I know about, 3 really. So that our fears, our terror was not unfounded. Moshe and Tibi were 10 years old, I was 14, identical twins from Hungary. Moshe was touched surgically, his scrotum was operated. And they did something to his hematological picture. He's alive, he's with us. He carries a hematological disorder which he passed on to his daughter. He married a lady with 2 girls, knowing that he will never be able to produce children. But he did. They have a daughter, a 3rd one, and she carries Moshe's disorder in her blood. Tibi was the other brother. They were 10 and a half. Tibi was taken away one day. He was returned 3 days later with a huge bandage on his head. Apparently, his cranium was opened. We have no idea why and what. And they slept not on my bunk, with Lawyer Schwartz. They slept, let's say that this was me, not here, on the 3rd floor, up, they were young. And next morning, appel, and Tibi is not moving, Tibi is dead. And Moshe told her, Moshe, appel. No, leave me alone in Hungarian. I have to warn Tibi, he'll be all right. We had to drag him away from the body. That's 2 cases. The 3rd one was Laci and Ephraim. They were 11 and a half from Budapest, from better families. Laci could sing. Ephraim had a voice like a broken pot. And Mengele decided to compare the voice boxes. So he operated on both children. Laci died. And Ephraim is alive with us. He lives in Beersheba and talks with an elder microphone. We can understand him pretty well. So that when you were told to go for a medical check, he didn't know what's going to happen. We truly didn't know. I received 2 or 3 injections, one into my left shoulder blade here, which produced a very, very painful, dull, painful, hard, stone-like growth here. It was a combination of greenish color. I don't know what, we don't know what, we have no idea. It hurt terribly, but of course I couldn't say, well, I have to go to work. Continue my work. It disappeared after about 3 weeks. Then I had an injection, we had to lie on our back, and again, I could see that I'm being injected with something here, which produced a very soft, red thing, which it was a different ache. It burned like a fire on me. Again, for I don't know how many days it lasted. So that every time we showed up, it was one of those bone-chilling experiences. And here again, how am I going to make you guys understand this? How can you? All I can do is make the noises. You understand? You can swallow this. You don't swallow it. It's the air mouth. And this happened to all the twins and the little people. Lajos Bácsi went to Czechs and so on. So we are now, the months are running by, and next week when the women appeared in the gypsy camp, of course the shoutings went across the wires. Are the twins with you? Yes, he says. I have a sister, her name is so-and-so. Judith shows up. How are you? But my Ima, da. So from then on, every day, when Lipa and myself cleaned the dishes, they were remnants of the lunch, of course, like you eat a lunch today, roast beef. You don't eat all the roast beef. There are little pieces left, and there's chicken bones and bits and pieces of tapchei adama. Undescribably important, precious pieces of food, which we gathered becherdat kodesh, divided up carefully, Lipa and myself, each one in a rag or in a piece of paper, and until Judith and Ima arrived, it was Lajos Bácsi. I was the richest partner of Lajos Bácsi. Very important addition in our food structure. And some of it went every day, weighed with a stone across the wires for Ima and mating. Then one day, and this was by now September, October, it was already frost in the morning. Weather was terrible, cold, rain, and we were all underfed, underdressed. All this I don't even touch on because it was part of a steady decline of every physique, no matter how strong he came in there, male or female. One day I was ordered to the Zigeunerlager, to the guard room next door. Sometimes I was sent to the crematorium here. And I went there. I think it was a large envelope which I had to hand it over. Then on the spur of the moment, I asked the sergeant in German, könnte ich bitte meine Mutti visitieren? Could I please be allowed to visit my mom? He said, where is she? He said, inside. Los, bugger off, okay, you can do. So I charge in, I found out where they are. And we meet, we hug, we kiss, we cry. And a few minutes later, I have to leave. And again, we meet, we kiss, we cry. And these two, I sort of throw it off simple, but it's not simple. Next day, as the throwing comes up, my sister says in Hungarian, Anyu haragszik, mommy is broges. Miért? Mit csináltam? What have I done? Listen. You didn't kiss mommy's hand when you came, nor did you kiss her hand when you left. Ima was embarrassed in front of the ladies of the Tzrif. Her son didn't remember his manners. Geweret, put that aside. I didn't see mother after that anymore. She was already a walking skeleton. And it's her steely spirit which kept her going. And we were now October, and by night we could already hear artillery. We knew that, and the Liberators, the American aircraft flew over us, bombing, and so on. We knew that the front is advancing. And November, December, and it was obvious that things are happening. There's one more episode which I have to tell you. Early December, days before this whole thing collapsed, but at the time we didn't know that. There was a small masiba, a team of 6 soldiers. One evening, a group of 4, 5, 6 SS girls arrive. And there was a party. We were told to stay, not to. Usually we were sent off by 7, 8 in the evening. And this is winter. And in the winter time, By 3 o'clock in the afternoon it's dark. And we assisted. We were the Thailand girls of the Tzrif. And everybody was drunk. Then, I don't know what was the time. And their laughter and this and that, and Fritz, who else, grabbed me by the ear. And the whole team, boys and girls, they walk me into the Mahsan, and I'm told to line up here on the wall. Fritz did the ordering. Fise, hand, I was ordered to stay like this. Fritz in front of me, and everybody's laughing, happy. Pulls out his gun, large handgun. First bullet, and this I couldn't forget, not remember. The others I don't know. This one I remember why. Into my trousers. And it was -6 or -10. And the urine still burns me today. Now, not in memory. First bullet. The second bullet here. Then the staff sergeant, top sergeant in charge, charges into the room and says to him in German, "You nuts!" They were all drunk. "Get the heck out of here." Grabbed him by the ears and said, "Mach, dass du wegkommst. Get the fuck out of here now, now, now." I don't remember where Lipa was in all this, and I don't remember arriving back into my Tzrif. I just don't. It's all rubbed out. How on earth do you pass on stuff like this? I have explained it, Beseder, but all the meat is missing because it cannot be dished out. How do I pass on all these things? It's a general problem. I mean, okay.
When you feel you speak, you can't tell how you feel.
Like, can I tell you how I felt when Mehdi told me that I shamed mother? Two things came to my mind since then. This second one was acquired with learning and age. The ladies in front of whom mother felt ill at ease were decaying, dying, crippled. Ladies, females lying their excreta and urine, 2.5 days away from death. But one was a Frau Dr. Vogelschwanz, the other one was Markovic, and mother was the wife of this, of that. A superimposition of normal society on the Inferno Notre Dante of Birkenau. What kind of it's completely a sugar. Okay, and not many more days later, we woke up one morning and the towers were empty. The soldiers disappeared. We were told by my capo not to present myself to work. And there came a hiatus of about 10, 14 days where the camps where all this was between the lines. And at the beginning of this, between the story of this shooting and the next 10 days, there was a general order in the morning to get ready for march. This is the famous death march, as you call it. Evacuation, really. Someone, correctly, from their point of view, there were about, I don't know, 400,000 souls here. Half men, half women. Why should we give these people up? Let them walk into Germany. They can help us for the months to come, which is the evacuation march, which you call the death march. Lajos Bácsi, who was my partner, would have been dead before we got to here, let alone to Germany. So he said, Kalman, Fiam, Kalman, my son, we are going to place. We hid under the treaty at Bank of ours, not alone as it turns out. And in the days that came, some stalwart souls found out that there is no electricity. How do you do that? You take a piece of wire, 2 stones at each end, and you throw them, trying to short out, see whether there's any no wire. Then some of us ventured out and met a German team who shot them dead immediately. So everybody knew, don't show your face. Until that Saturday, which I maintain is the 20th of January, where a uncle with a white thing showed up in the afternoon with a submachine gun, and we understood that this is a Russian soldier. And from then on, this thing started to roll into what is our next chapter. Judith walked with mother into the death march, and apparently somewhere along the route, Ima, along with others, collapsed. She fell into the ditch. What happened, I don't know. Judith refuses to tell us. I gathered bits and pieces from other people, and I surmised, I cannot say whether it's right, that the grown-ups have dragged Judith away from mother. Because it was obvious that if she remains, she'll die too. So someone had the wherewithal to say, Geveret, your mom is finished. You come with us now. And I'm unable to say because I don't know. Judith does not communicate. They were liberated 3 months later. They walked into Germany, and many fell on the wayside and so on. They were liberated in April 45, one day after the last day of Pesach. So my sister tells me, read the note more or less, in a place not far from East Berlin, a township named Malhof, which exists. We know it exists. How were these people buried? Who buried them? No marked graves and no. But then who marked the graves of the people who got burned in Birkenau? So they disappeared this way or that way. End of the Birkenau chapter. We didn't look at the watch. 12 o'clock. Are we okay?
Yes, super. How did you feel at liberation? When you saw the Russians?
You specialize in the difficult questions. The answer lies in the next chapter. I'll talk about this. I was not elated. I was different. I was in a psychophysical vacuum. We walked with Lajos Bácsi from our camp when it was free, the Russian, first a few soldiers, the military, the fighting soldiers. 2 days later, the whole caboodle arrived. And they came in horse-drawn carts. There were no motorized transport. And we always knew who is the Jew. The officers cried. There's no problem finding out. And children were an incredible rarity. We hundreds of people who just grabbed my hands. I'll talk about this later on. As we showed up, we tramped, we walked our way south back to Hungary and so on with others. Wherever I entered later on when the joint assisting bodies already existed, people used to walk up, young mothers, old mothers, Yiddish, Hungarian, German. Please, please, I had a son just like you. His name was Moshe. He's here. You have brown hairs. He was black, and his eyes were different. And he spoke Yiddish, and he spoke a good Hungarian. He looked like this, and perhaps you remember. Please. I'll talk about this. I mean, I want to be methodical. You told me to divide things into chapters. I'm doing that. Now this is a hafsaka. Now close your eyes and think of the files of these walking files. I represent a walking file. You have been given a look, a peep into one of these files. How many are we alive? 100,000, 80,000, 60,000? And we are dying off. Half of us are in closed institutions, broken. The half of the remaining half cannot communicate. I belong to I don't know, 1/2 or 1% of this miserable crowd who is healthy, ready to talk, able to talk. I am a rarity. Yona didn't, I don't think Yona understands this. Maybe she does. She tried, hers was a shot in the dark. What did she tell you?
You were in Auschwitz when you were 20.
And that I will be ready to talk?
She didn't know. She didn't.
Because she didn't hear this story. We never spoke. I think she was not sure about this and she didn't want to ask. Because you wouldn't talk. Over the years, we were accosted by BBC, CBS 60 Minutes, the Dutch television and radio. CBS 60 Minutes sent a Jewish lady, one of these $1 million a year girls, to interview us when the body was found in Brazil, and they argued whether this was Mengele or wasn't Mengele. And they came to our home in Sharon, and I took them to Yehudit's home in Tel Aviv. Yehudit refused to talk. She allowed them to photograph her. Then, at the Falkland War, Argentina and Britain, the British Navy had some ships shot out from under them and into icy waters, and they had a largish population of Navy people shell-shocked. And they heard about Hannah's doctorate, which caused a lot of noise in the scientific circles. And they sent over the Katzin Refuah Rashi of the British Navy, lovely person, Colonel, what's his name? Grabbed the group of Hannah, the Katzetnikim of Hannah, and took us to Kibbutz Lochamei HaGetarot, treated us to a lovely lunch in Akko on the seaside, compliments of the BBC, and filmed us. They wanted to compare Hannah's work on post-traumatic treatments, because Hannah not just spoke, Hannah wrote a thesis in which she maintains that the Freudian and Jungian methodology of poking the nose of the hurt person into the trials and tribulations, thereby sort of opening it up and allowing the guy to get better, is a mistake. Hannah maintains that the help comes via allowing the person not to touch the mess. This was her doctorate. And the scientific circles still didn't swallow it properly. Hannah is still a minority with this idea of hers. Anyway, the British Navy, the Royal Navy, came along to ask us about that. Then the Dutch people came. They had their problems too. So I have a fair amount of video things and so on to pass on to my children. I have 2 complete sets of everything. One for Udi, one for Amichai. Udi gets married this November, please God. And I told him the day that they set up their home, 1 set of the stuff is handed over to him. He's the Bechor. So when all this is over and you finish the story, then comes the standard question, Adoni, what are you looking in the Talmud department of Bar Ilan? You don't give Shabbat, but you go every Shabbos to Shul, you drive to Shul, because you like the rabbi in Fashmayahu, Rabbi Vidora Cohen, you have a way above average set of academic grades in your master's program. How can you? I have heaps of relatives who are not Haredim. but neither do I know what to do with this darn thing. And I'm putting it aside, and I take the liberty and my right to enjoy Torah Sheba'al Peh, because it's magnificent, beautiful stuff, and it has, says I, not much to do with the Kudosh Baruch Hu department. It's a brilliant socio-cultural platform, which I'm proud to be part of. Does this mean that I have to go to the mikveh? And if it, yes, who says it? Yes, the Rav Pagerhi. The average Rav, as far as I'm concerned, is a miserable Pakid Dat. He's not my leader, he's not my advisor, he's not the man I want to follow. Back to Birkenau.
But you believe in God?
I don't, yes, I submit to myself that there is a power out there. I have a map. I went to great lengths to show this first to myself. I spent some weeks, years ago, at the National Geographic, and I have nyloned and heat-treated a magnificent map of the known universe. Beautiful stuff. Only National Geographic can do stuff like this, where we are shown in comparison to the rest of the universe. And all this is in an orderly, magnificent fashion. It's not possible not to say at least that, well, there must be someone who orders all this. This is as far as we go. Whether the Jews, I compare us to the Jukim, with the front left leg, the little yellow mark, that's the Jews. And we submit to everybody who would listen that we are the finest team of Jukim ever. And the chairman of this whole magnificent thing is personally hashgacha pratit of every Juk and his yellow coat. Slicha. Okay. Back to Birkenau. After about, once we were sure that the Russians are there, we walked down to the township of Oswiecim and into that military barracks, which today is called Auschwitz, with the museum and where the archivum where I got my cards to these people. And we settled down in one of the empty tzrifim, and I went to scrounge and to find food, and we found a subterranean mahsan, huge amount of fat, chazirim, for food, raw materials, and itriot in boxes, and sugar. Wow. So I grabbed a heap full. We emptied a large conserve box, started a fire, and cooked itriot. Lavish Bachi advised me how to do it. And filtered the water and ate itriot with sugar. Geveret. This is a meal I will never forget. The taste. Unforgettable. If you ever hear someone tell you about an unforgettable meal, גברת, תשתקי. אני מכיר מישהו שהוא אכל an unforgettable meal. Then we parted. I don't remember for the life of me how was this done. I just don't remember. It's rubbed out. I'm unable to report how I parted from Lajos Bachi because it has a continuation. And what did I do? I walked into the general direction of south. Whatever stopped for me, I climbed aboard, whether it was a rail platform with coal, a heap of coal lying on it, or a car, a Russian trolley, or a lorry, or just walk. And what do you do when you walk? And outside, it's now January, European January, Geveret. It's -6 to -19. I don't know, I never counted it. And the killer was not the minus. The killer out there was, and still is, wind. So, how does a 14-year-old boy walk? And I was free and at ease because there was no control, no soldiers, nothing. What about food? You relieve yourself whenever nature stops you. I had compunctions about what to do this, what to do that. All I wanted is to be more or less warm, and you do this simple issue. Mostly food, the feet are very good. Take a rag, place your feet, not like this, like that, yes? Turn this thing around. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your shoe. And you place several layers of newspapers or old paper, whichever, what you have, and another rag on it. Pretty darn good. Until the temperature drops, then it becomes slushy. And this is how I walked. I was as happy as Pinocchio. The general direction, weiter. And what happens when the light goes down? So, you look for a chimney, a smoking chimney. And you walk towards it. There's always a dog or two, and you have a stick in your hand. Knock on the door. You don't have to say who you are. It's still Poland. Southern Poland and Czechoslovakia. Boże mój, this, my God, they knew who I was. And the standard was, in the good places, I had a soup, a piece of bread, a piece of cheese, and shomu shamayim, I was allowed to sleep at the foot of the wing. Okay. Just beautiful. Other places I like better. They gave me a piece of bread, a piece of cheese, which were heavenly stuff. Beautiful. And was led to the urva. I slept with the livestock. That was beautiful. Truly beautiful. They were afraid of me, of my lies, of my this, my that. And this is how I slouched my way across most of southern Poland until we got to the city of Przemysl, Irveim, Israel, beautiful Kehila there, historically. Przemysl was destroyed. There's a little stream, good-sized thing, going across the city. There was not one house standing there. And as I walked, I stepped off a lorry, and it was Purim, 1940. And someone says, hey, chodź tutaj in Poland, come here. What is it? I have stumbled onto the first joint assembly place for Jews. Again, I didn't have to explain who I was, and there was a standard procedure. You step into the room, the person, the lady, and another one. What's your name? Where do you come from? Where were you liberated? When were you liberated? And now, careful. Tell us of the people whom you were liberated with. Their names, where they came from. Standard question. And they recorded all this. And as this was over, they said, now, do you have lice? Of course. And do you have open wounds? They undressed me again carefully, being afraid of my nudity, which I think was ridiculous. But they were normals. And they cleaned me, and they gave me a pair of shoes and socks. My God, underwear. Gveret, clean underwear. And clothes. And I was 14. I was not a grown-up. I asked Hannah about this. How come I didn't cry about myself? I was so sad and all bad. She said, Hannah, you're lucky. You were too busy staying alive, and you had no time to be sorry for yourself. And I'm not to this day. All the grown-ups were crying. The standard mark of a dying Muslim walking skeleton was that he cried. He gave up. As soon as tears appeared, he was finished. That was the standard. And for me, I learned that tears are no, because Fritzsche Fritz gave us another one with his hand if I cried. They hated winning children. And it was burned into me, you don't cry. Whoever cries gets the shit beaten out of you. Full stop. And this is how we dragged about from city to city, and I soon found out that in every city, all I have to do is ask around. I said, yeah, sure, yeah, over there in the next street. which was the joint, usually the hospital, the Jewish hospital. And in one of these hospitals, I step in, and again, a gentleman at the control room, and at this room, and sit down, where do you come from? By then I was, your name, so-and-so, Brown. At the time we were called Brown. Baron is a hyphen for Brown, Baron. Where do you come from? Such and such a place, Balashadjan. Your father, so-and-so. Your grandfather, so-and-so. As I dish all this out, fellow jumps up and gets the hell out of the room at a run. Comes back a minute and a half later, dragging his wife, who is already crying her heart out. My niece, Moyeka, she was the daughter of Saba Shmuel Pinchas's younger brother. Menachem Mendel was, grandfather's brother, and he had 2 daughters and 3 sons, and Sarah, we called her Moyeka, she was the husband of this guy. They found me. Of course, they took me in, and then this was already true luxury. In their home, I slept in between 2 clean sheets. Again, this is an input that will not fade or weaken. Sleeping between clean sheets. Sit down for a meal, and someone pushing you. You have some more unbelievable stuff. Anyway, this was back to normalcy, and after a while, I was, we were directed, we were great finds. There was very few people my age. And I found myself soon enough in a Zionist framework, Bnei Akiva, and I was sent off. By now we are in April 1945, and I found out that I have an aunt who stayed alive, in Budapest. Budapest ghetto was not destroyed, and Moyeka was my connection. I already inside the family framework. And I was directed into one of the education institutions, which was assembled for children like us and held by the Zionist organization in Hungary, where we studied Hebrew. I already had a pretty good Hebrew from ex-yeshiva under my belt. And by the fall of 1945, we were headed for Yugoslavia for the Aliyah Beit ship, which I took. It was called Knesset-Israel. There were about 4,000 souls on board. Children were born on board. And we bumped into the British Navy not far out of Haifa, who would then forced us off our ship and onto British Army ships into the detention camps in Cyprus, which was already a different story. The Aliyah Beit, the Aliyah Tanoar, and we were already treated, and there was a school there. And we ended up, I'm sort of skimming over this because it's not of much interest. And you can read them in any Aliyah Beit summary. And after a year, in October 1947, our Aliyah Beit ship arrived end of 45, December 45, December 46. I spent all of 45, the better part of 46, in that educational school of Bnei Akiva. Fall of 46, we headed for Yugoslavia. Cyprus until October 47, some weeks before the declaration of the state. We arrived into the athlete detention camp just outside Haifa, spent there the day of Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur. It was 17th of October. And the day after Yom Kippur, I was already shunted off to Mikveh Israel as a boy of 16 plus. And from there it was the army. That's the end of my second chapter, a short one for us. By the age of 18, September 1948, after about a year in Mikveh Israel, I enlisted into the Air Force. I wanted to be a pilot. We stopped here. In September, already before that, in Mikveh Israel, when they sent me to the Aliyah school, when I came out after Yom Kippur, I was shunted off to Aliyat HaNoar into the Mikveh Israel Agricultural School just outside Tel Aviv. There was a Machzor Dati there and a Machzor Chiloni. I was in Machzor Dati. And having spent a year there, I enlisted into the Air Force and was sent as a flying cadet to one of the courses until I was ordered to medical, which went all right until I got to the Rofei Naim, asked him. He said, Slicha, what do you want here? You cannot be a pilot. Your right eye is half dead. And I was chucked out. I was heartbroken. And I swore that if I ever have a son, he will be an Air Force pilot. He was an Air Force pilot. That happened later. Part of that was Australia. 5 years in the Israeli Air Force. In mechanical work. Teaching. I was an instructor in the Air Force school outside Haifa. Out of the Air Force, March 53, September 48, March 53, about 5 years. Before I even left the army, I was already accepted in El Al. There was a pretty good career, half technical, half commercial. Among them, the assignment in Australia. Then I was a company spokesman for about 4 years. And left El Al in August 83, September 83, after 30 years, 6 months and 1 week. And some mooching around as an early retiree, and 10 more years at Elbit, commercial documentation. And when I retired, I headed straight for Bar Ilan, the Talmud department. It was my dream to come back to between the pages of the Talmud without the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Not in a negative sense. He doesn't need my respect. I have a hunch that he survives with or without my respect. But I understood on my own, nobody introduced me to this. In psychological terms, I really craved back into my, your husband would call it Girsa de Yankusa, Girsa de Yankuta, the rose gardens of my childhood, my yeshiva. And both grandfathers inculcated the love of Torah Shebaal Peh into me, as well into my older brother. Except that he had 3 more years of yeshiva under his belt, of another very famous yeshiva. And he lives in England. He's a pharmacist, and he lives a similar Masorati life. But I wanted more. I wanted a proper grounding in Torah Shebaal Peh. This is why I spent 4 academic years working my fanny blue. I was not an average student, way above average. And not because my kavod wanted it. Another thing I learned in Birkenau. The real value of this hot air thing called kavod. I know what the bullshit kavod is. I really do. You know that I hark back to Birkenau. I'm allowed. This is not an orderly thing. Of the many bodies decaying and dying, I was always, when I came back from work, I accosted some people, friendly. They all loved to see me. I was a child. We were a rarity. And one of them, turns out he was in normal life, he was the director of the Hungarian Coal Board. This would be similar to Rafi, what's his name, the head of Chevrat HaChashmal, a major figure in the Hungarian economy. And we were good friends. He was an elderly gentleman. He said, Kalman, my son, we will get out of here. Don't you worry. And when we do, you are my son. Your education will be attended to. Don't you worry. Just hold tight, we will be out of here. He didn't. He disappeared. And which brings me to this strange remark that inside that inferno, I borrowed this from Dante even though it is not appropriate, there were sparks of strength and optimism. And they were given on a random basis. Since the chairman of the board doesn't talk to us, I meant to ask him many times, Slicha Adoni, how do you issue these sparks of optimism and inner strength? It was a small uncle from northern Hungary who was in real life a cobbler with 9 children, completely and totally illiterate. And in Birkenau, a migdalor of strength. My aunt, Doda Tzvia, she's still alive, she is a migdalor of strength. Ima was a migdalor of strength. And her daughter is. Judith is a totally crippled person. She collected on that march Daleket Praki, rheumatoid arthritis. She walks around with, she cannot open a Coca-Cola bottle after you released the cock, she cannot open it. She has 2 knees of plastics and 2 hip joints of plastic. But she gallivants around in misadot, and she has friends, and she leads a busy life, widow that she is now. She is made of steel, unbendable and unbreakable, obviously inherited from mother. So that inside that choshech, there were sparks not of secha. This has nothing to do with secha. It is some inner calm and strength, which is one day someone will get a Nobel Prize for finding out which part of our DNA carries this spark and find an injection to hand you a spark like this. But there in that darkness, among the 10 Aseret Hamakot, one of them was the Choshech. And if you look up Sefer Shmot, you'll find the expression Yamesh Choshech. The darkness, it was the heart of darkness, Joseph Conrad. The heart of darkness. He didn't know what heart of darkness was all about. He should come to us. Inside that Yamesh Choshech, there were little sparkles of light. One was this cobbler fellow. The other one was some uncle. The other one was... It had nothing to do with your pre-Birkenau background. It was the most genuine inner wherewithal of you. I asked Hannah about this too. She studied, very intelligent, very smart person. She says, Kalman, I can point them out. You are one of them, God knows. But I want you to explain. What do you want from me? I don't know how this thing works. I'm a psychologist. And my God, you guys showed me how little I know. I believe I finished my story for you, Geweret.
But I want to know how you felt in Israel as a survivor. Did you feel that you were a survivor? Or did you want to blend?
The first stage, no, I never blamed anyone. The first stage in
Blend.
the... I blended beautifully. I mean, the greatest social blender there is. In Mikveh Israel, this was the place where I still pocketed 2 slices from the table and 1 orange. Sheiyeh. It's called Sheiyeh. We are ridden by Sheiyeh apropos to this day when Ariela sent me to the super, which is not often because I drive her nuts. I want, אנחנו קונים עוד אחד. לא צריך, יש לנו כבר 2. שיהיה. In Elbit, for 10 years, I was famous for the technical writing department, Kalman Baron, and his Sheiyeh department. I scrounged a little aroma about this size, and in there was always waffles, wikis, a little bit of sugar, tea, Nescafe, Sheiyeh. They were, Mikveh Israel was still the period when we were called Sabonim. Remember the Sabonim? I was a Sabon. And they were girlfriends later on. I was 17, 18. And Haifa, there was a well-heeled Israeli society in Haifa. And we went out for movies. I was a good-looking young girl, 21 years old, 22, the Air Force. Not stupid. The beginnings of English, because some of the stuff of the Air Force aircraft were in English. Girlfriends, we stuck up a fair amount of friendships. Most of them withered. Reason, I found out later on. Parents said, Giveret, who is this guy? Is he normal? Are you sure? Where does he come from? Does he have some kind of a cholera between his ears, which will turn out later on? Who were his parents? Where does he come from? Don't touch. Back to the original sentence, Bedidi have uvde. Remember this sentence. Tell your husband, he will know. So that I carried this business of Sabon for a while, but it didn't last very long. The army eradicated it. It just disappeared, and I was much better than average. I was smart and learned fast, and I had a good linguistic thing which was given. I inherited it, and in no time at all I was bilingual, read, speak, write, I galloped ahead in my acceptability. I didn't have any problem. And one thing I refuse to them to this day, to touch German reparation money or anything that is German. Our house is clean of German products to this day. Though it's fading, by now I ask myself, תגיד, הונגרי, זקן, מכוער, טיפש, מה בדיוק אתה, על מי אתה עושה רושם? על אף אחד. I am ill at ease with German toivus. I'm ashamed. I don't travel to Germany. I went to Austria once with Yossi Sarid and with Pepi. Pepi was the youngest twin. He was 4 years old. Marta was his sister. Because in the mid-80s, my brother Dov married Sharon. Simon married afterwards, his daughter. And of course I went to the Chasene. And among the crowd, my Uncle Meyer, step-uncle, I asked him, Uncle Meyer, where is Lajos Bácsi and Yitzhak Feld? Where did they disappear? He said, what do you mean disappear? Yitzhak Feld lives in London with your Aunt Esther. So I lifted up the telephone, we spoke, and I asked him the question, Rabbi Yitzchak, Talmid Chacham, Yehudi Dati, what happened to Lajos Bácsi? My Dargash friend in Birkenau. He said, what do you mean, what happened? He lives in Bratislava, in Czechoslovakia. Again, I took the phone and the address, I wrote him a letter, and there ensued an exchange of letters in Hungarian, which I keep religiously. And about a year later, Lajos Bácsi described me his life. He was a nationally recognized artist. He was a very capable artist, and he made many sketches on paper and coal. Mengele gave instructions to help him because he couldn't be used at work. And he went around the camp drawing portraits and things, and he made many sketches of Mengele. He made at least half a dozen sketches of me. And all this was, of course, taken away. I asked him, first question, where are the drawings? He said, he came and took everything from me, Mengele, along with the medical notes. And then a large article in Yediot Achronot appears. Pepi traveled back to Birkenau with a group of Knesset members, Yossi Sarid, he was Yoshiv Rosh HaKnesset, Professor Shevach Weiss, and a few others. And Yossi Sarid took Pepi trying to find his sister Martha. And he wrote a huge article in the Achronot about this. And Pepi describes Lajos Bácsi to Yossi Sarid. And Yossi Sarid picked it up in his article, what the twin told him, that there were only two small people in the back, in the twin camp. Lajos Bácsi, who was about the size of Pepi. And he described this, that they were left in the, everybody was out doing some work except the two little ones, Lajos Bácsi and Pepi. And Pepi intoned that Lajos Bácsi died. And on one Shabbat, I remember this, I read the Yediot Achronot article, Pepi telling from the Kulmus of Yossi Sarid how Lajos Bácsi is dead. So I said, Slicha, first to myself, to Ariela, Lo nachon, Lajos Bácsi is not dead. So I lifted. Sharon and Ramat Aviv. Mar Sarid, yes, my name is so-so, I am a Mengele twin. Please be advised that Lajos Bácsi is not dead. He's alive and kicking, and I have a file on him, we exchange letters. He was my surrogate shutaf. Says, there's a silence, a moment, he says, Kalman, do me a favor. Do you have transport? Yes. Get into your car and come to this place now. So we meet, we sit. As a result of this, and this is still communist Czechoslovakia, 3 weeks later, Yediot Achronot dispatches Yossi Sarid with Pepi and yours truly to Birkenau, to Czechoslovakia, to visit Lajos Bácsi. And I have pictures, I have the article, and we showed up, and we visited his home, and we went to the hospital. He was 82, 83, and he was cared by a Catholic family whose son, in his early 40s, was a doctor, and he treated Lajos Bácsi. They were his surrogate family. And Yossi Sarid wrote another article. Bekitzur, it was one of those people who wanted to know what happened. And then I found out that Yossi Sarid is really a bit of an opportunist. It was a convenient vehicle for him to make a lot of noise, which he did, and did it very well. He's very smart. But Lajos Bácsi died, I don't know, some years later. It's all listed in my little address date books. Who died when and where, and he's buried in Bratislava, in Czechoslovakia. He sends many of his sketches for me, reprints of this. I have a fair collection of his work, and some of his oil paints you can find in the museum in Yad Vashem.
What do you think of Yad Vashem?
I have listed Yad Vashem in the rubric Lehavdil Elef Havdalot, but in the rubric of Torah Shebal Peh, calling it a necessary, important and necessary Megera in the cupboard of the history of Am Israel. Did I put that right? The more work they'll do, the more important this is. The Shoah must not become an inquisition, where there are 1.5 professors in the Jewish world and 1/2 professor in the Christian world who knows a thing or two about the Inquisition. This must not happen with the Shoah. Not because I'm personally interested, but because the Shoah is too big to be forgotten, although it's already forgotten. It is already dusty, and where do you keep the old stuff? Bottom or at the top? We are already at the bottom of them. Yad Vashem is well funded, and they will electronize everything. There will be a database, already is a database, very important. It should go on, it should, in other words, any future generations who want to do a PhD or a master's degree in this area, they should be able to dig and bring things and write. Important. It is important. That's it. We have.
Just one question. When? Why did you go back to your sons to Berkeley?
Slicha.
When and why did you go back?
I started to talk to Udi and Amichai about the bar mitzvah age. We had discussions like this, bits and pieces, and there came a time when I said, Ariela, we have to go to Berkeley. It's time. Udi was already a pilot. Amichai was in the Armored Corps. It's time. And after Yossi Sarid is at fault, because when this happened, that's where I made a note that we must do our bit. And others went, and the communist system collapsed, and it was less difficult. And I told Udi and Amichai, Chevre, אנחנו עושים לבירקל. Then we had a security problem. Just as Yossi Sarid had to go to my Katzin Bitachon in Elbit, who told me, Baron, you are going no place. You are classified, hyper, super, duper, and nobody will allow you to go to a communist country. תשכח מזה. I went back to Yossi Sarid and said, Yossi, the Shushu people advised me that I cannot step out of this country. He said, רגע אחד. By that time he was a member of the Knesset, חבר ועדת חוץ וביטחון. A week later, Shmuley cuts the Shushu guy from Elbit, calls you a Baron, תבוא למשרד, אני צריך לדבר. נכנס בפנים, and he was so angry, he said, I was ordered to allow you to travel into Czechoslovakia. Someone sent along lape is Yiddish for a paw. Someone extended a paw and allowed you to go. Get your stuff and go. He was so angry. This is how this happened. There you are, you see, an other than standard file for a normal human being, a goy dover Ivrit, but I'm still here, I'm alive, and if you want to ask the chairman of the board, how come that I have received a first-class ticket to every maracha of this opera? Your husband would remember, I'll remind him about this. I'll quote something. I don't know from where I'm quoting. ראתה שפחה על הים, מה שלא ראה יחזקאל בן בוזי הכהן. Explanation. The little servant girl who had the good luck to be present at Kriyat Yam Suf found herself an aid. What's an aid? A witness of a once in a, not in a lifetime, once in 200 lifetimes in the history of Am Yisrael, such that even giants like Yechezkel Hanavi didn't rate. And remember that Kriyat Yam Suf was on the top of the Sinusoida. Now I paraphrase and say, Slicha, I am the little yankel from the Bira Amikta, not from the Igra Rama of the Sinusoida, who was forgotten by the editor on the behind the curtains. Someone lowered the curtains and they didn't notice that I'm there. And here I am taking part in every maracha. What's a maracha in an opera?
Act.
In every act of this magnificent opera. Who paid my ticket? Slicha. מי קנה את הכרטיסים שלי? Nobody answers. And my punchline is, גברת, out of Torah שבעל פה, as is appropriate. One from Uncle Yeshayahu, פרק נ"ה, פסוקים ח' וט', צ'קני, כי לא דרכי דרככם נאום השם, the first half goes, כי לא מחשבותיי מחשבותיכם, ולא דרכי דרככם נאום השם. פסוק ח'. פסוק ט' is a similar grading of how we don't understand him. But more important, and that's my final punchline. מסכת מנחות. Do you have a shas in this house? מסכת מנחות, דף כ"ט עמוד ב'. Line 5 or 6 from the top. Not Steinsaltz, the richtige shas. Amar Rav. I'm quoting, no, I cannot quote all the text, but the bits and pieces. Magnificent Agadal, you will see in a minute why I quote it. בשעה שעלה משה אל המרום, you read is good enough for this. ראה הוא להקדוש ברוך הוא מצייר כתרים ותגים לאותיות. I'm not sure whether I quote exactly. And you see Tosfot on the right hand side of the page, the large letters, 7 letters. Shatnez gets Shin, Ayin, Tet, Nun, Zayin, Gimel, Tzadi. The 7 letters on top of which there are little chupchiks, 2 legs, 3 legs. And where does the left leg point? And the first leg, ask yourself first. ראה הוא כותב כתרים אותיות. אמר לו, משה לקדוש ברוך הוא, שאתה עושה, we have to check, and Rashi explains the text, סליחה, you mean to say that your creations are not perfect? You have to correct them? What's going on here? The sentence in the Gemara, we will look it up, we'll do you a favor. Rashi explains the sentence, that you have to correct your handiwork. מה זה כאן? asks Moshe ben Amram. And the chairman says, אדוני, אמר לו, הקדוש ברוך הוא למשה, אדם אחד יש בסוף כמה דורות, down the time scale, ושמו עקיבא בן יוסף. והוא עתיד לפרש תילי תילים של הלכות, הכל תג ותג. And Uncle Moses is in action. He turns straight back and says, הרי הוא לי. Mr. Chairman, I want to see this guy. So, says the Kadosh Baruch Hu, חזור לאחוריך, get into the time machine. And he is deposited at the generation of Rabbi Akiva, enters the Beit HaMidrash, says the Gemara, נכנס וישב בסוף 8 שורות. An elderly gent, nobody knows who he is, sits down in the last row of the Beit HaMidrash. And as the Rabbi Akiva intones his lecture, Moshe is close to fainting. Says the Gemara, Tashash kocho. What is? He doesn't understand what the subject is about. He says, my God, this is my Torah. I don't understand what's going on. מה זה כאן? עד שבאו לידי עניין, and one of the Talmidim says to Rabbi Akiva, מנהלן, סליחה, Rabbi Akiva, where do you take this explanation from? The answer, הלכה למשה מסיני. And our stranger in the 8th row, apparently I haven't received all the material yet. So Moshe returns back and says, ריבונו של עולם, יש לך אדם כזה ואתה נותן תורה לידי? What on earth do you want from me? Akiva ben Yosef should deliver the Torah to Am Yisrael. Who am I to do this? Now he gets a response, which I will not quote, for a dramatic reason. He gets an answer from the Kudush Baruch Hu. And Moshe doesn't give up. He never did when it came to defend people. He said, Ribono shel olam, heratani torato, tare li scharo. Now I've seen the longness of this guy. What does he get? Chazor lachorecha. Get down back. I'll show you what he gets. He arrives in time to see the Romans take Rabbi Akiva apart with kolavim, with the hooks of the beef people. And he turns back horrified with a sentence we all know. ריבונו של עולם, זו תורה וזו שכרה? Now comes the answer, which I omitted the first time, the second time. The chairman says, according to the Agadah, listen carefully, שתוק, כך עלה במחשבה לפניי. Now please grab these 2 lines. ריבונו של עולם, זו תורה וזו שכרה? Remember, I am the little guy who was forgotten in the opera. סליחה, someone. זו תורה וזו שכרה?
when we stood in Birkenau next to the farmhouse with me. I have problems keeping the lid on. I heard this sentence on the wind. The place was quiet, nobody goes to Birkenau. And even less go to the farmhouse. They don't know what happened there. I do. I am the little boy who was left on the podium. And I had my twin sons with me. Huh? They didn't understand. They knew that I am in troubles. How on earth do you want me to dish this out? To whom? For crying out loud. They sensed that I am... They just held on to me. And I didn't have to explain. In a way, and this is my Torah Shebal-Peh grounding, the chairman, there's a Hungarian folk term to say, Elohim lo marbitz b'makel. The chairman neither hits nor hands out solace verbally. He must have said, Shmok. Here is my solace, Udi and Amichai. What do you want from me? Didn't you get your bit out of this opera? I presented you with this to show the question marks inside me and to answer in one fell swoop the question, so who are you? Shomei Shabbos? Yeshiva? How dare you go to Bnei Barak for Masechet Gittin and drive to Shul? I dare. This is my file. Who is going to teach me? Rabbi Pipichev? I put this up for the last bit for you. No charge. Have you learned something from this? Not from this, from the whole package. Slicha. You see, I exercise control. Not bad, you have to admit. But not complete. It's not possible to control this.
What do you mean?
Keep the lid on. In all my talks, lately I refrain from this because I get embarrassed. Some years ago, I was still in Elbit. In a moment of weakness, I agreed to talk to a seifa of Yom HaShoah in the Technion. And I had in mind 50 people. And when I arrived, the lady, the public relations lady, we said, sure, come with me. There's big posters. The Mengele Kalman said, Tiva, what have you done? I said, what do you mean? You are our speaker. And I find myself in Ulam Churchill, 400 seats, jam-packed, half of them with kibbutz rugo. My God, what have you done to me? And I discussed more or less along these lines, and I got stuck at the other red hot item when Ima said that I didn't behave. And just consider me standing on a podium with a huge auditorium jam-packed, unable to continue. I did. I gulped. There's a deathly silence. And Professor Tadmor, who has twins of his own, came afterwards and said, Baron, we were not warned, but you did step on our gonads. You certainly did. But I didn't intend to. But it's like this. What do you guys want from me? What am I supposed to do? Be ashamed of this material? נכון? מי שרוצה לשמוע, this is why I dislike talking about this in larger crowds. I need the more hafnama. It cannot be done in a large crowd. This is enough for one normal day. Noise making. Shut the machine.